Let me give you some examples of ways a firm can block entry. So the barriers to entry. Here's the first one. First way a firm can block entry or barriers to entry, it's called economies of scale. And I'll explain this. So I'll give you a theoretical definition and then we'll dig into it of how it can be used to block entry. Now the idea behind the EOS, economies of scale, what it says is, this is when average cost, that's the AC, is falling as output is expanding. I'm going to explain this. So the economies of scale, as we produce more of the particular good, the cost per unit is actually falling. Let me show you how firms use this to block entry. Here's what the EOS looks like graphically. I'll show you. Here's the output. Or think of it as the quantity. And here is your average cost. Remember, average costs is the cost per unit, the cost to make one. And what we call economies of scale, or more appropriately, extensive economies of scale, it looks like this. As you produce more of the particular good, the cost per unit is actually falling. So it looks something like this. And I'm going to show you how a firm can use this to block entry. If you are an existing firm, an old firm that has been doing this for a while, and you have internalized certain efficiencies, and you make a lot of the good, you've been there for a while, you're going to be producing quite a huge output. So you're going to be, let's say somewhere like here. This is the quantity for the existing firm. So you've been at this for a while, you're in the industry, you're doing pretty well. That's the quantity for the existing firm. So this Q for the existing firm, look at the cost per unit. It's about here. Let's call it AC for the existing firm. Now if you are a new firm, chances are you're not going to start off ramping up on a quantity that's close to what the existing firm is doing. You're new, you just entered. And chances are your quantity is going to be lower than this amount. In most cases, significantly lower. So you probably start somewhere here. Let's call it Q for the new firm. Now look at what the cost per unit is for that new firm. Look at the gap that exists between the cost per unit for the new firm and the existing firm. Do you think a new firm can effectively enter this industry and compete successfully against its existing firm? The answer is no.
That's how, like, in our corn production, like the small farms are getting beaten out by like Monsanto, and they're not able to like produce the same amount.
This is in the corn industry?
Yeah, that's what I was trying to apply this to. That's what I was going to mention in the Monopoly, is like the Monsanto company.
And they're a monopoly in that particular industry, and they're using this effectively, it seems.
Yeah, they produce like 80% of our corn.
Oh. So, new firms are going to find this hard because your cost per unit is $50 for one, and the existing firm can do it for $5. There's no way in hell you can enter this particular industry and successfully compete against them. In fact, there's a company that does it very well that you're very familiar with. I'll give you a hint.
Apple?
Utilities. Aren't utility companies?
Well, the utility companies are natural monopolies. They're kind of sort of closely related to this. From a competitive framework, everyday low prices?
Walmart. Yeah, but that's fine.
Walmart has a monopoly forward and backward is what I argue. And people might say, Walmart, they're a monopoly? Oh, here probably not so much because there's Target. Just kind of hot on their tails. But especially in other geographical areas, maybe more so like the East Coast and so on, Walmart kind of pops up in these towns. The mom and pop, they better put on their Hawaii shirt because you are retired. Yeah? Walmart comes into town, these small mom and pops, they are done. I remember a couple of years ago, Walmart out here wanted to open in Chinatown. Oh man, I thought it was gonna be a revolution. There were people on the streets, they were like, no, and people were like, Walmart, why are they getting so crazy? Well, Walmart coming into town, these smaller stores kind of sort of can compete very effectively. You had your hand up?
Yeah, Walmart lost like $21 billion Wednesday.
No, this is interesting. Even though they lost 21 billion Wednesday, take a look. It's always interesting for me to look at the Forbes richest people. In my mind, I think my name is gonna be there, but there's not even anybody with the name Campbell there. But I always like to look at that list, and the last name of the Walmart family is Walton. And it's so interesting to see their ranking, because it's not like the Walton family has one spot. It's like separately and differently, you know, grandmother, the uncle, the other auntie, they're all separate spots, like independently. Their own wealth gives them their own spots, not like the Walton group, which is very interesting overall. The 21 billion is probably like $20 to them, right? Now, the argument I make here with the economies of scale is Walmart has a monopoly, what I call forward and backward, meaning whenever a firm is selling anything to Walmart, Walmart, because of their scale and distribution, has a lot holding over the firm's head in terms of bargaining. I'll give you an example. Let's say I go to Walmart and I say, hello Walmart, I want to sell you this paper. And Walmart goes, I like it. And I say, I want to sell you this paper so you can put it in your stores and I'll sell it for $5. Walmart says, I like it, I'll buy it for $1. And chances are, I'll still sell to them. And kind of the idea is, I don't want to lose that Walmart account. The distribution is so huge. I'm going to hit so much. And Walmart has the monopoly forward and backward. And because they can negotiate these significant deals overall, and pretty much get away with asking for really, really low prices from their suppliers, a lot of it translates back predominantly everyday low prices, the prices that the consumer themselves face. Now we could get into a very long discussion about the ethical dilemma that Walmart faces, especially as it relates to their labor force. We've all heard the horror stories, yeah?
They were kind of like pioneering this.
It's legal barriers to entry. And I'll explain this. So another way a firm can block entry is from legal barriers to entry.
Were you saying that in a sense Walmart is good, in the sense that...
They were benefits that existed.
Yeah.
Now when we put them together overall, there was a net cost or net burden to society because a lot of the labor practices were just so inefficient. But at the end of the day, there were net benefits.
So
yeah?
the labor practices were more efficient, it would actively be a monopoly that could, I don't know, monopolize more, I guess?
A monopoly that could have overall benefits to society from that particular perspective. Yeah? Now another way to effectively block entry, legal barriers to entry. And one way, so under the legal barriers to entry, we have this one, the patents. And that's what you were talking about earlier. You guys know what a patent is? Yeah? What's a patent? So, intellectual property. Well, a patent more so is like this. It's related, usually, to technology. Well, it's the exclusive right of an inventor to use or to allow others to use his or her invention. So yeah, they're technology, but it could also be particular intellectual property. It could also be whether medical goods and services. But the idea behind a patent and how it creates a monopoly is you build a particular good or service, or you come up with a particular invention, and anybody who wants to use that has to get your right to use it. Now, whatever invention you come up with, if it makes a good or service, which is a pretty good or service, whatever that might be, and people buy that good or service, then if you own the technology or the invention behind that, and nobody else can use it, then effectively you have a monopoly. This is why Samsung and Apple, they stay in court fighting about the platform associated with making the phone sing and dance and popping you into heaven or whatever these phones do. They stay in court back and forth. A patent violation. No, you violated it. No, you violated it. And the idea is, when you own these things or own these inventions, you own the particular good or service, and effectively you are blocking entry. Nobody else can use it. If you're blocking entry, that's one effective way to continue to create or have monopoly rights on the good or service. Very common in the pharmaceutical industry example that you were giving before.
That applies to like CD-ROMs, I think. I think the patent for these CD-ROMs was supposed to expire like in the next couple of years, and that was supposed to change the market for that.
You mean those little disc things?
Yeah.
People still use those?
Yeah. Or like Nintendo 64 cartridges and stuff like that too.
You know, it's interesting because a patent, the right for a patent in the United States is 20 years, but if it's a pharmaceutical drug, it's only 7. The idea is, you know, in 7 years you can kind of recoup your R&D, but
That's
other
why they sell off, like,
inventions,
the generic portion or whatever. Yeah.
by the 7 years the generic drugs can kind of be pumped out. Now this is interesting. Lipitor, you guys are probably too young to be taking Lipitor, but Lipitor is for cholesterol. And I think it was a couple of years ago, after the 7-year period, their patent was running out. And they were one of the first to actually go to the Department of Justice to say, oh, by the way, the 7 years is not enough, I'm seeking to extend it. And the Department of Justice chased them away because it was very alarming. A pharmaceutical company would even think to do this because after the 7 years, the generics can be pumped out. But they actually took it to task and went to court, and of course they were denied. But it was interesting to see a pharmaceutical company kind of try. It's like, 7 years is not enough, I need to make some more money. But a patent effectively during the time period, one legal way to create a monopoly. Another way, legal way to create a monopoly, so under the legal, is licenses. So you have patents and you have licenses. And this is just a limitation on the number of producers for a particular service. This is when there's just a limit on the number of producers, usually in a particular geographical space. So the radio example and the cable example that you gave me earlier, licenses can create monopolies, and those are some of the examples that exist. So licenses, well, if you're the only one with a license to give traditional cable in Woodland Hills and you're Time Warner, then you create a monopoly in that area. If you're the only one with a license to give cable, traditional cable in Long Beach and you're Charter, then you have a monopoly in that area. So that's one way.
What about like sporting apparel? Is that a way to control, I guess?
Is the ownership or control. Another way the firm can block entry, the ownership or control of the essential resource. So if whatever it is we need to make the good is owned by one firm, then that firm effectively has a monopoly. So whatever we need to make, manufacture the good, distribute the good, is controlled by one particular firm, then that firm will have a monopoly on the final good or service. So they own or control the essential resource. Can you think of examples?
The Wrigley Company with Catalina Island with land.
The which one?
The Wrigley Company with Catalina Island, they own the vast majority of the land. Everything has to go through them to dictate everything. And there's only a small percentage that they actually allow people to buy or lease from them.
So this is land out in Catalina, out by Long Beach there?
Yes. It's owned by the Wrigley Company.
So what in my mind, I'm trying to define the industry here.
Real estate.
Couldn't you say real estate or even hospitality, the hotels?
In that very specific area?
In that geographic location.
I'll take it. Yeah?
OPEC, with the oil.
OPEC is an international cartel. So how OPEC works is, and we'll get into this when we talk about an oligopoly, member countries, the countries that predominantly manufacture, distribute oil, oil, are the member countries of OPEC. The reason why I'm kind of hesitating here is that essentially a cartel is kind of sort of like a monopoly. However, it still falls under the market structure of an oligopoly. Yeah? So of the member countries, the few countries that control the world supply of oil, they're all members of OPEC, and there are only a few. And if that's the case, in terms of that natural resource, that's an oligopoly. But when they come together as one group, i.e. OPEC, we call it a cartel. And a cartel is kind of sort of like a monopoly, but not like this.
What about De Beers with diamonds?
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
It's a very good example there. In my other class, I said a girl's best friend, and a girl was like, my dog. I was like, oh, hell no, give me the diamond. So a very good example is De Beers. So a very good example. So De Beers is a German company that monopolizes, owns, controls the manufacturing, distribution of diamonds globally. And part of the reasoning is, how does this fall under ownership or control of essential resources? Well, they kind of sort of have patents, or I'm not going to get a license because they don't anybody lobby. Ownership or control of essential resources. But here's one that might be very applicable for blocking entry, especially to you guys in business. One other way a firm can block entry, and it's this. It's pricing and other strategic behavior, and I'll explain this very briefly. And you take away from it what you need to take away from it from a business perspective. You can effectively use marketing, pricing, a little bit of your business strategy to act as a barrier to entry. So for example, you're in an industry, you see new firms coming in, maybe now is the time to ramp up your advertising. It's very hard for a new firm to be entering and trying to get things off the ground and simultaneously compete with a very robust marketing strategy that you might have going. Maybe when you see new firms entering, that is the time to have a sales promotion, to lower price a little bit. And these are the things that you kind of extract from your business courses. I don't have a lot to say here, but they can act as ways to effectively block entry. That's what we mean by pricing and strategic behavior. Now I will caution you here, the United States has very strict antitrust laws. Now you see a new firm coming in, you can effectively offer sales promotion, market more, so on and so forth. However, what is considered illegal in the United States is this. You cannot see a new firm enter in the industry, lower your price, run at a loss. So you lower the price to the point where you're losing money, but you just hang in there while you're losing money because you're trying to drive the other guy out. And when they leave, you then raise up the prices again. That's illegal in the United States. You're violating antitrust laws. And people say, then how are they gonna know? But if that was me, I'd report you. Okay? So that is illegal. Now people say, how come Walmart is able to do it? Remember what I said earlier. You cannot lower your price and run at a loss. Walmart's cost per unit is so low that even though they're running at really low prices, if they're not running at a loss, technically they're not violating any antitrust laws.
They could be breaking even, but they're still so low, you know, lower than the competitor. And as long as they're breaking even and not technically a loss, they can get away with it.
Break even or make even a little bit of profit. Once it's not in the loss stage running so that you can drive that person out of business and then you go raise up the price, technically you're not doing anything illegal. Yeah? But pricing and other strategic behavior from a business perspective can act as an effective way to block entry if done correctly. Okay?